We want to talk about Billy Graham today, Miguel. I noticed that you bought a Billy Graham book with you yesterday. That's not because you're a Billy Graham fan, is it?
No, I've for some time studied Billy Graham, his life, his connections and friends with world leaders. These are powerful individuals, some of who are Freemasons, others are members of the Bohemian Club. I found that of particular interest because at the club they burn babies in effigy.
Do you mean the Bohemian Grove in America?
Yeah, they sacrifice babies in effigy.
You mean real babies?
No, creating an effigy.
Effigies, right.
They
okay.
used to, but they don't do that anymore. The baby's called care, and so they have this ceremony called the cremation of care, because care symbolises all the political struggles and the things that are going on in the world, so they more or less influence not the outcomes of what goes on in politics, but they influence political, the people that make political decisions are in that position of power.
Do you mean care? Care is an acronym for something?
No, care is the baby.
The baby's called CARE.
Yeah, it's not an acronym. It's just literally
right.
the burning care.
Because they're careless.
No, because the stresses and the things that go on they have to deal with, and for them it's a way of getting rid of that sort of stress. And the whole retreat was made as a retreat for rest and relaxation, but there's a lot of homosexuality that goes on in the Grove, and that was admitted by Richard Nixon in it's called the Bohemian Club tapes, and he talks about some of the things that go on in the Grove, but he said there is a lot of that sort of, that goes on. Richard Nixon is one of Billy Graham's friends at the time of his presidency, and there's a book that was published, quite a rare one. It's called The Annals of the Bohemian Club, and the date of publication is 1987 to 1996. The front picture has an owl on it's a green book.
What's the symbolism of the owl? Because I know it's related to being wise, and also the Freemasons, like the symbol of the owl.
The symbol of the owl isn't a symbol of wisdom. The owl is a predator.
A night predator, hunts in darkness.
It hunts and kills mice.
It likes darkness.
So the whole concept of that an owl represents wisdom isn't true. It's like a vulture, because it is a predator, and that's what it does. It seeks to kill and destroy. So the owl is symbolic of that in the Grove, because it's associated around death. If I show you an image, these are some of the highlights, but it's quite a big book.
In Milton Keynes, there was some people noticing that there was some owl statues, small, about 8 inches high, being placed in odd places around the shopping centre.
Yeah, I don't think...
Is this Masonic, do you think?
It possibly is, but I don't think it's related to the Grove. This is one of the original pictures of the sacrifice of a baby in effigy of the Grove, and I've got clearer images than that. But this book is quite rare.
Because Billy Graham had access to all the presidents, didn't he?
He did. Even the Clintons. He stated that he could leave his wife to run the country while he becomes an evangelist. And Bill Clinton is quite perverse. There's a lot of Druid or pagan symbolism in this one of their rituals. But if you notice that they're wearing hoods, the hooded men, and you only do that in like Satanism or witchcraft. I'm not saying the Satanists, but why why is it mysterious? What's secretive about what goes on there? No one ever talks about what goes on in the Grove.
Is it something to do with the Skull and Bones Club that presidents are?
No, that's separate. That's a play. So they put on plays, theatrical. The men, these look like women, but the men dressed in drag. All the all the female characters are men in the Grove, because at the time in 1996 there were no women allowed. It was an all boys club. So whenever you see like representation of women, it's actually men.
But it's not as innocent as a pantomime, although they're not exactly innocent.
No, because it is promoting cross-dressing, but it is basically the idea of transgender.
I stopped going to the pantomimes in Milton Keynes. I used to take my daughter every Christmas and birthday, but they're full of filth. The innuendo is disgusting, Miguel.
Yeah, it's just, that's the way of the world. Trying to get that clear image. That's the sort of owl. We call that Molech.
Oh, the top picture.
Yeah.
Molech.
Yeah,
so,
it's like Molech burning,
The
sacrificing a baby in
Right.
front of that owl in effigy is no different to what they did in ancient Babylon. So it's the old, all the mystery religions.
So yesterday we talked about, you talked about Zeus.
Called the cremation of care.
Yeah. You talked about Zeus being another name for Baal, and now we've got the owl in Bohemian Grove. Is this all linked throughout the ages to Satan? Because you were talking about Satan's seat in Germany.
It's linked to the mystery religions, Mystery Babylon. And it's going back to Babylonian mysticism.
And do you think abortion plays a big part like it used to? It hasn't stopped, sacrificing innocent baby blood, innocent lives.
It's not going to stop. As long as there's evil in the world, as long as Satan is the god of this world, it's always going to be the case. This is, I got to get onto Billy Graham. I'm going to show some photographs, but I got a quote from him. This was in The Clergy and the Craft, because this whole thing about Billy Graham, he seems to surround himself with Freemasons. I'm not saying he is a Freemason, but he doesn't seem to have a problem with Masonry. This was from a Masonic book called The Clergy and the Craft by Forrest D. Haggard, who was a past Grand Master of the Missouri Lodge in America. So he quotes Billy Graham. Billy Graham said, "I find two kinds of young people today. The first and least important, those given to rebellion and violence. We've always had those far back as Cain and Abel. Those vowed to annihilate the middle class morality and ethnic, and to toss away the time-honoured traditions of the ideals of yesteryear. But happily is this group a tiny minority with more noise and influence. There are thoughtful, concerned young people who seek to correct the errors of the moral navigation that is made by the elders intelligently and responsibly. These young people upon which the hope of America's future rests on the Demoles, which are part of this group. May God richly bless all the Demoles as they continue in their good work." Now, the Demoles are run by the Freemasons to initiate, as they get to an age, it's to initiate these young people to be future Freemasons into the Masonic lodges. And so these young people will become Masons. And what he's saying is that then America's future rests on Freemasonry. Because he's saying the Demoles, which is a Masonic order for young people. So it's all about initiation and secrecy. Interesting that Forrest D. Haggard, who's Master Mason, quotes Billy Graham, and then in this book, Billy Graham, in Just As I Am, he gives a very good description of his endorsement of Norman Vincent Peale. He says, "Another day we had lunch," this is a quote from Billy Graham, "with Dr. Norman Vincent Peale and his wife Ruth, preaching on the power of positive thinking and had made him familiar to millions. Mrs. Peale did a magnificent job in heading the women's prayer group for the crusade. Dr. Peale was warmly supportive of the meeting. Although the emphasis was in preaching differed, I found him deeply a committed believer with genuine concern that men and women gave their lives to Christ." We question that. Was he a committed believer? Because here I've got a book published by one of the former presidents of the United States of America called Henry S. Truman.
Oh yeah.
And it's called 10,000 Famous Masons. You can buy these on Amazon. He cites Norman Vincent Peale. It says here I'm going to quote about Norman Vincent Peale. I'm going to read you that quote. It says, Norman Vincent Peale, Protestant clergyman, born May 31st, 1898 in Brownsville, Ohio, probably the most known Protestant minister in America. Graduate of the Ohio Wesleyan University in 1920. And then it goes on to say he was pastor at Berkeley, Richmond, and Brooklyn and Syracuse, New York, between 1922 to 32. Since 1932, he has been pastor of the Marble Colgate Reformed Church in New York City. He writes regular question and answer feature for Look magazine, editor and guide posts and Inspiration magazine, president of the National Temperance Society, a lecturer on public affairs and personal effectiveness, and he's the recipient of the Freedom Foundation Award among his best-selling books, The Guide to Confident Living and the Power of Positive Thinking. He is was a member of the Midwood Lodge, this is the Masonic Lodge, in number 1062 in Brooklyn, New York. He was the Grand Chaplain of the Grand Lodge of New York City from 1949 to 51. He was initiated as a 32-degree Freemason, and a member of the New York City Life, member of the Crescent Shrine Temple in New Jersey, and past Imperial Grand Chaplain of the Masonic Shrine.
What's the crescent got to do with it? This is
well, it's
Arabic,
because of Islam.
Islam.
In the Shriners, well, if you're in the Shriner part of Freemasonry, you have to pledge allegiance to the Quran as well as the Bible. So it's to Allah. And so the question is, like Billy Graham said, that he considered to be a deeply committed believer. Now the question is, could any deeply committed believer truly be a Freemason in light of the fact that Masonry regards Lucifer? No, that's Satan. They call him the light bringer. So they more or less orientate the lodges around Luciferian worship. So Vincent Peale was Luciferian by nature. For that reason, I question Billy Graham's statement on that. So if he believes that Freemasonry is incompatible with Christianity, why would he say that he was a deeply committed believer? Another aspect, I came across quotes of about Billy Graham, and he cites Walter Cronkite, who he was friends with. And now Walter Cronkite is in the Bohemian Club, but also he quotes Jimmy Carter. He's in the book Just As I Am. You can read the index, it's freely available. I think you can get it as an ebook. If I got that part about Jimmy Carter, I've got he talks about, he had meetings with these people, but didn't seem to know about the kind of things that Jimmy Carter was up to, especially with his involvement in the lodges. But there's I believe he was a Mason, but he was also Bohemian Grover. There's a picture there of Jimmy Carter here. What's interesting is that I also came across Richard Nixon, and Billy Graham cites in his book Just As I Am that he was friends with the Nixons. So that's Richard Nixon. Basically, he knew quite a lot of the past presidents of America. He was also friends of the Bush family. So you have George Bush Jr. and Sr. And that guy
Newt Gingrich?
Newt Gingrich. He wasn't, I don't believe he's mentioned in Just As I Am. I didn't really check, I didn't have much time to check, but Newt Gingrich was in the Bohemian Club. He's a member of the Bohemian Club. He's in the official book. And he has been an invited speaker at Costa Mesa and Calvary Chapel, invited by Chuck Smith to speak. And yet you've got someone who doesn't mind in effigy sacrificing a baby to an owl and before an owl, which is really pagan. If I go on, get these the quotes. I've got the Catholic ones that I want to highlight. If I go to here.
Is this where Billy talks about his Catholic, Muslim, Hindu brothers and sisters in Christ?
No, this is solely about Catholicism.
Okay.
So Billy Graham says, a few days later in Minneapolis, I received a phone call for someone who identified himself as John Kennedy. In spite of the man's New England accent, I seriously doubt that it was he. He wanted me to say that the religious issue should play no part in the campaign, so it's mainly political, that I would not hesitate to vote for a Catholic if he was qualified. He gave voice to on the phone to some answer that I had given to Salinger. Now, if you remember, the Catholic Church or Catholicism is a theocracy. It's not simply a religion. It's about politics, and they've got a lot of power and influence in people of positions of power. And so Billy Graham is seen to be a figure of influence in politics. Then you've got this. He says, I did not think I saw any serious problem with a Catholic in the White House. Many Protestants, however, did have concerns, including in my own Southern Baptist denomination. Baptists had a long tradition of stressing separation of church and state. The idea of having a president who might owe a degree of allegiance to a religious leader who was the head of a foreign political state, the Vatican City, concerns some of them greatly. In my boyhood, Democrats in North Carolina have voted against Catholic L. Smith of New York in various Republican candidates, however, partly because of some religious issue. So here shows how Billy Graham has become rather sympathetic towards Catholicism at this point.
To say the least.
And then he goes on, I did not agree with some Catholic teaching and church practices, but warm acquaintance and fellowship with many in that church. He's talking about his fellowship in the Catholic Church. Have long since.
We're rolling now.
So Billy Graham goes on to say, I did not agree with some Catholic teachings and church practice, but warm acquaintance and fellowship with many in that church have been long since laid to rest whatever prejudices I might have had. In addition, Herbert Humphrey, whom I met first in Minneapolis, introduced me to Senator Jack Kennedy. So I think there may have been, not connection, but he may have known the Kennedy family. That's what the impression I get from it. But what was interesting is he talks about on page 391, if you remember I showed you in the book, the Annals of the Bohemian Club, Nixon. He talks about his time that he invited Nixon to Switzerland, where I assume that he was doing some crusade in Switzerland at that time. And so he tried to invite Nixon to come meet him. And Nixon is a Bohemian Grover, was when he was alive. Anyway, getting on to the next section, he talked on page 462, he talks about President Clinton. So he was friends with the Clintons and he spent a lot of time with them. He says today, for his family and his friends, his nation remembered President Nixon's life. President Clinton said in his remark to let them say, may the day of judging President Nixon or anything less than his entire life or career come to a close. So he don't want anyone looking to Nixon So in the Nixon tapes you have Billy Graham, I think it was Billy Graham with Nixon talking about the Jews and making anti-Semitic comments, and it was on the Nixon tapes. There was a scandal around it. It wasn't meant to get out, but it was leaked out the White House. Now what was interesting is this quote concerning Cardinal Wojtyla, who became Pope John Paul II.
It was revered, the most revered Pope of the Catholics, isn't it?
In the Catholic world. This was on 487. Billy Graham writes, "By the way, Cardinal Wojtyla never did return to his post in Krakow." So he was a Polish Pope. It was he who, and the other cardinals, elected to be the successor Pope. He took the name Pope John Paul II. His election was announced shortly after the final press conference in Warsaw. When I got off the plane in Paris, I was besieged by reporters wondering if we had met in Krakow, and they wanted me to tell him how to pronounce his name. This was back to Poland and Hungary. In Warsaw, during SIPF, at the Christian Theological Academy, they gave him the honorary degree of recognition of the 1978 preaching mission that evening, which were guests of honor at a dinner hosted by the churches in Poland. Many changes had resulted in 1978 mission, notably the formal and vital follow-up discipleship groups having hundreds of Catholics and Protestants. Not surprising then, they tried a stronger cooperation amongst Polish Christian communions. So here he's making ecumenical statements. To go on, still on the Catholic issue, Billy Graham says a few days later he was given to him by Reformed Theological Academy of Debrecen, Hungary, one of the oldest Protestant ceremonies in the world, co-hosted by Bishop Tibor Bertha, the Hungarian Reformed Church, and Imre Milklos. I can't pronounce Eastern European names, so do forgive me. Secretary of State of the Church Affairs for the Hungarian government. And then he goes on to say, and this was on page 488, the formal academic ceremony steeped in centuries-old tradition, Bishop Bertha conferred the degree on me. The event was the Academy's main auditorium facility in the full academic regalia. So I assume this is the, if you go through university, you get the outfit. It's the graduation thing.
Right.
So the audience did not only students and pastors, but also a number of communist officials were present at this. So it's interesting that never once did ever Billy Graham speak against communism. The time he was with communists, he never spoke about the time that Christians were getting persecuted by the communists. He just kept silent.
Is that because of the influence of the presidents, or is it he wants to please everyone?
Well, it comes across that way. What the motive is, I don't know. They said that he was, when we left Hungary, we set up for a brief trip to the Vatican, so he went to the Vatican City. Years before, I visited the city's oldest state as a tourist, but on this trip I was received by Pope John Paul II in the Vatican, which was my first visit with a pope. We met by the contingent of Swiss guards in the full-colour medieval uniform, escorted me into a private elevator leading to the papal apartments. On first reaction was the magnificence of the public areas of the Vatican was suppressed, if anything, but by of the private areas. So he went to the Pope's private chamber in his room.
To give the gospel, do you think,
No.
in private? No.
To seek to have unity with the Catholic Church.
Mm-hmm.
So he was ushered in the quarters by Pope John Paul II, greeted me. We shook hands warmly and I found him extremely cordial and very interested in our ministry, especially in his homeland. After a few minutes, I felt as we'd known each other for many years. He was very interested in album pictures took during our Japan crusade, and a few months before he was scheduled to make his first trip there shortly. So he wasn't there to give the Pope the gospel. He was there to seek warm friendships with the Pope. That's why he accepted the invitation.
So Billy Graham is a figurehead, not just amongst Catholics who want everyone to go home to Rome, but also with the ecumenical movement.
Well, this was something I found interesting in page 599. He says, the Pro's 1987 date threw me into immediate quandary. I was asked by Pope John Paul II to participate with him during the same time period in an unprecedented ecumenical service of worship during the visit to Columbia, South Carolina. It was not to be a mass, so it's not the Catholic Mass, but the service of scripture, prayer and preaching. I was to speak on the subject of the family. And he's saying he went to worship inside the Catholic Church with the Pope. So, like I said, he's not there for giving the Pope the gospel. Then he says, I was looking forward to the next event. That event, especially since the Pope and I had a cordial relationship.
So he's saying Billy Graham's looking forward to meeting this Antichrist, the Pope.
Yes.
He's looking forward to it. This is his own book, isn't it? Can you just remind us, this is Billy Graham's own autobiography.
Yeah, just as I am. So he says, Tex Rendon of my staff had been asked to advise the Catholics in some of the arrangements. We had a crusade in the same stadium a few months before. John Akers, an ordained Presbyterian minister, was on the board of the Protestant committee planning the service, which I did not want the Pope or the committee to think I was looking for an excuse to avoid the service. He was quite willingly going in.
Was Graham, did he set out years ago in the 50s as a true Bible-believing, gospel-preaching evangelist in the stadiums and then went slowly apostate?
I think,
or has he always been bad?
No, I think when he first started, he didn't have that many connections, so it would have been genuinely for the gospel. But as he got on and he started getting involved with the connections of these people, he was moving away into universalism.
So like Brother Andrew, the author of God's Smuggler, fantastic first book, but we see as the years pass and he becomes more popular that his narrow path starts to widen.
Well, that's the problem when we get big, and it's always better to keep small because you've got more control.
Less seduction.
There's less temptation, and you're more focused on what it is you need to do, what you should be doing, as opposed to the kind of things that you could end up getting up to, because it's quite. When you get that big, it becomes very tempting to get involved with the wrong crowd.
Yes.
But the problem is, it is another spirit.
In saying the wrong thing, or the right thing rather, can lead to less donations coming in.
Well, Billy Graham, in an interview, Larry King Life, talks about...
The American TV show host.
Yeah, he's a Mormon.
Larry King's a Mormon?
Yes.
Not that I watch TV, but...
On CNN. But he talks about his... That's Billy Graham, the Pope. He talks about his encounter where he became friends with the Cardinal before he became Pope John Paul. And in his inauguration, where they were shouting, Polish Pope, he says, to quote him, Billy Graham says, I was there at his inauguration when he became Pope.
Oh dear. Are you aware of the interview with Billy Graham where he talks about his Muslim, Hindu
the
brothers in Christ?
Yes.
I mean, how can you be a brother in Christ if you're a Muslim or a Hindu? And he named other religions too. I heard it with my own ears.
It boils down to what the Catechism teaches on Islam, because the Catholic Church teaches more or less that these Semitic religions hold to the same God of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. So what he does, and he attaches all these other religions to that, thinking that God's mercy is wide, and so he accepts people no matter if they hold on to a particular religious belief, as long as they acknowledge there is a creator. But you can't do that with Buddhism, because in Buddhism they don't believe in gods. They don't believe in a deity. They believe that God is nature. It's the whole concept that what you are, you become part of. when you take your ascension.